Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman and Base as Megaman. In the last part we started off the game and got through a good 2 Robot Masters, and now it's time for one of my absolute favorites design-wise, Pirateman. I don't know why, this guy's designs just always clicked with me. Let's see, Pirateman. Being savage and brutal, he could do anything to attain his goal. Good point, he's fearless. Bad point, he's a scoundrel. He likes money making and he dislikes fair negotiations. A corporate leader indeed. This is by and large our usual water level for the series, so you got semi-low gravity, physics when underwater. Unfortunately, they removed the ability that Mega Man had in 8 where he could swim for some reason. I don't know why they would remove that, bar maybe some programming stuff that wouldn't make it work on the Super Nintendo versus the PlayStation, so you do actively have to, do the water level like it's a water level, which is a little annoying, given the cramped nature of a lot of this area. But, oh well. Base, I think, definitely has a harder time in the first half of this level. The latter half, not so much for reasons we'll get to when we get there. Something I probably should also note is, if you try to use Wave Burner when it's underwater, it just sends out little waves of air instead. It does still damage enemies, especially the boss fight, but it still can be used. Additionally, I didn't even know this until doing some research between this part and the last part. Wave Burner actually does have a use I never really use it for, in that it can actually light up dark areas of stages, however few there are in the game. So in a certain later electrical stage, you could use that for that. Additionally, a little bit of a cool detail, by and large, every single one of the 8 special weapons we get throughout the game actively looks different for Mega Man and Base, like Flame Burner, for instance, Wave Burner rather. It's red and has very detailed fire as Mega Man, but it's green and is much more wild looking and undetailed with Base, which is kind of cool. Also be careful of this hallway. This is very hard to get through without getting hit, especially trying to do the slide strat. Now, something that I'm very thankful about with the way this game's Robot Master stage select screen works. It probably would have been very easy to develop the game in such a way where that when you beat a Robot Master, you may not have unlocked the Robot Master weak to the weapon you just got, but thankfully, by and large, in any instance I can think of in the game, when you beat a Robot Master, one of the ones you unlock will be one of the one that is weak to that weapon. Like when we beat Cold Man, we unlocked Burner Man, and when we beat Astro Man, we're gonna unlock Dynamo Man. When we beat Groundman, we're going to unlock who's weak to his weapon and all that. Because I feel like had they gone through this game in just a slightly different way, it could have been very easily overlooked to not do that, rather, and they just put you into a very bad corner where you just don't have a weakness for 2 bosses in a row. If anything, there's a game that actually showcases that potentially being a bad thing, and we'll talk about that relatively shortly. Either way, the latter part of that stage there actually takes a note from Tenguman stage in Mega Man 8, where we have those bubbles. They do shield you from the spikes, but if you fall down to spikes, you're still gonna die, so be careful in that room. Base has an easier time there than Mega Man. But now it's time for Pirateman. Children or Abita actually took a bit of a note from this guy in that the water level here is slowly falling, making it harder to dodge his attacks with the less vertical space you have. Wave Burner is his weakness, which seems to not do much at first, but when he gets into his bubble, it actively pops the bubble and prevents him from bouncing around in it like he wants to do. That's where the threat of the lowering water comes in double-fold, because not only does it make it harder to dodge the mines he shoots out and explodes, it also makes it hard to dodge him trying to ram into you. He does raise the water, though, once it gets too low. Not a hard boss with his weakness, kinda hard without it, though. But for beating him, we get a pretty handy weapon that I don't take good advantage of for a little bit. We get the Remote Bomb, I believe it's called? Remote Mine, one of the two? Remote Mine. You fire a mine forward that you can then control vertically with the D-pad up and down, allowing you to aim it at specific enemies. And additionally, it sticks to the enemies upon contact and will only explode when you want it to by pressing the button again. Yes, this means it's a little limited in terms of how many you can have on screen, but it's got some pretty good coverage. The mine's explosion is not to be underestimated. Before we enter the next stage, though, let's take a look down here at the shop. Both Mega Man Base have it, and Otto mans it both times, unlike what they would do in Mega Man 10 in particular. This is where you can spend any of the bullets you pick up in the stages. You can get extra lives here, the exit ability to leave stages without having to go. You can get a full-out communicator to talk to Roll, who will give you hints about the stage or where CDs can be and all that. The main thing I'm here for is the energy balancer, which does the usual thing where if you pick up excess weapon energy, it'll go automatically to the lowest weapon. And I do pick up that item below it eventually, which looks like a weird little person on fire. which I believe boosts the power of your attacks when you're low on HP. It does get more items the more we go through, though. I'm not grabbing every item, just the ones I really like, because, Grinding for bolts in this game, harder than it is in Mega Man 7, 9, and 10. By a pretty substantial margin, because I can't really think of an enemy that's like the birds that will just automatically drop a shitload of bolts. With that said, time for Groundman stage. Groundman's a robot created to excavate ruins. His weapon, Spread Drill, can drill hard objects. You don't say. Good point, he's deep thinking. Bad point, he's a little inhospitable. He likes something rare and dislikes coarse things. I'd like to note his likes and dislikes make more sense in Japanese, where they're rare objects and groundwater respectively. So this stage is a little bit tricky in that it's almost a puzzle level. In that, well, we have these little timing puzzles where you need to like scoop past these worms if you don't kill them fast enough. But you also have semi-bottomless pits in the sand that you can just drop into. But it's particularly like the last third of the stage where they actively bring in a bit of a sudden puzzle element that's kind of fitting the somewhat shared tile set with Swordman stage from Mega Man 8. And I'm not a fan of that section, especially on the GBA where you can't see shit. I think what really makes it annoying with stuff like that is that I think to this day, the GBA version of Mega Man and Bass is the only version of this game that's been officially released over here. I say that in a slightly unsure manner because there was a little like some arcadey plug-and-play machine that Capcom and SNK co-made together in the last year or two. That was like some versions of Street Fighter 2, I think Mega Man X, Mega Man Soccer, the 2 Mega Man fighting games, and Mega Man and Bass. But I'm not sure which version of Mega Man Bass is in there. I think it's the SNES version, but I'm not entirely certain. And even then, again, I'm not actually sure if that released in the West. It was a cool looking thing, but if I recall, it was also absurdly expensive and not worth the price of admission. Anyway, we've got a mini-boss here against this worm. I need to hit the head, and it's surprisingly hard to dodge this thing on a first run because its movement patterns are kind of erratic. It does try to like go high and low once per rotation, and it will generally always leave the room through a wall different than the one it entered in. And in a way, it actually kind of reminds me of one of the earliest bosses in Metroid Zero Mission. But this can be kind of rough as Bass because you just do so little damage, that fight can take forever. Going back to that topic though, it's weird with Capcom because they're doing good about re-releasing some of their games that are just more obscure here and there. Like I know that one of their SNK collab games about Mega Man, Power Battles I think, was just released on Switch in the last year or two. And that had never been in the West before, I think. And I just really hope we get a version of this that people can tolerate playing anytime soon, because the GBA version should not be what people play. Not that I think the Super Nintendo game's great. Again, I think it's lower half Mega Man Classic, but it's still like worth playing. At least once if you're a fan. Alright, so here's the puzzle portion of the stage. We have these little totems right out of Swordman's stage, and there are two types, white and red. But every time you destroy a white one, spikes encroach on you slowly. So you need to carefully platform around and not destroy extraneous ones, otherwise you're getting crushed / stabbed to death. I'm not sure how you're supposed to get some of the CDs with regards to stuff like this, unless there's just items I'm really forgetting about. I think maybe actually one special weapon can break the spikes. Maybe. If you're rushing through this, you're just gonna get haphazardly killed, and it's not worth it. And even then, sometimes you have cases like that where you just stealthily slide past it. There is another route you can do to ignore that entirely, but I think that's mostly base exclusive or needs another special weapon. And just hold right here and keep jumping, because if you hesitate at any moment, you might get situations like that where you get such tight platforming scenarios with that Sniper Joe that you're probably going to fall in the bottomless pit. With that said, it's time for Groundman. This guy is actually kind of pushing the Super Nintendo to its limits in some regards because of his one main attack he likes to do a lot, where he hops into the ceiling and drills down when he gets above you about 3 or 4 times. You can see the sprites flickering a little bit. When he's not doing that, he's doing a similar attack where he'll dive into the ground and just pop up generally below you eventually. Or he's charging left and right across the screen in an invincible tank formation that even Remote Mine cannot damage. With that said, you can still stutter his attacks with Remote Mine slightly. The Mega Man and Bass bosses aren't as susceptible to that as, say, the Mega Man X bosses or even Mega Man 7 bosses, but they're still susceptible enough. In particular, you need to have a Remote Mine on him when he tries to go, I think, underground in specific. Oh, we can also fire his Spread Drill, which you can either fire a big version of, you can split it up into 2, or each one can split up into 2 from there as well. He can be dangerous, but he's much more handleable than I think some other bosses, even without his weakness. For baiting him, though, we get that spread drill. It does the exact thing it did when he used it. You can fire one large drill, and it'll fly forward and eventually fall down. But if you press the button at any point while it's out, it'll split up into two smaller, faster drills, and that'll then do the same thing, eventually fall. But then you can press it a second time, or no, I guess a third time, and it'll split up into two more. Total of 4 tiny drills. That can destroy certain walls and obstacles, like the gray ice blocks we've seen in a couple of places. But notably, the smaller drills, each subsequent type of them, does less damage than the largest drill type. So for instance, when we go into the next boss fight, he's weakest to Spread Drill's largest version, although the small versions can still stun him. Speaking of which, time for Tenguman. One of the 2 returning Robot Masters from Mega Man 8. Where's your bio? There it is. Used to be an experiment robot for generating typhoons. He's designed after a Japanese goblin. Good point, he's got an independent spirit. Bad point, he's a bit of a snob. He likes fly fishing and dislikes fellowship. I'd like to note every single one of those points make more sense in the Japanese text, like good point, reading the situation, bad point, high-handed, likes, fly fishing, dislikes social constraints. And this stage is a little rough in that it starts off as one of the few autoscrollers in Mega Man, period. And this section here in particular, if you're playing as Mega Man, is really tight to get through without dying. Base's double jump gives you so much more safety there. If I had done that too early or too late, I would have died pretty quickly. And I love Mega Man and Base Tenguman's theme. It's so relaxing. It's the complete opposite of his PlayStation 1 song or even his Sega Saturn song, because he's, I think, one of the few Robot Masters that has 3 outright different songs throughout his history. Good stuff, good stuff. Yeah, they bring in Astro and Tenguman from Mega Man 8. The only time I think outright, besides being like, here's this game but on a handheld, they've really reused Robot Masters to that extent. I guess technically also barring the Mega Man Killer DLC in 10. It makes me wonder why for Mega Man 8 at the Wily archives in 10, they didn't really use Astro or Tenguman, because then they could rep both 8 and Base? Kinda weird. But what's kinda neat is, if you discount the 2 recurring Robot Masters, apparently each of the 6 other Robot Masters kind of like analog to one of the ones from Mega Man 1, like Cold Man is Iceman, Burner Man's Fireman, Pirate Man in this case would be Bomb Man, weirdly. Groundman is Guts Man, Cut Man is Magic Man, weirdly, and then that loops back. Oh wait, no, I forgot, Dynamo Man's Elect Man. And what's interesting is, if you follow that order, it's even the same weakness order, which is kind of cool. In the latter half of the stage, though, this stage ditches the bottomless pits for the most part, thankfully, and the 4-way scrolling with a lot of spikes, very thankfully, for a more constricted level design that has pipes. And the pipes, you might notice, like that one there on the corner, have the occasional crack on them, and if you shoot that, you actually break open the pipe and wind will gust out of it, pushing you in the direction it is facing. For the most part, that hinders your progress, but in some cases, like the jump over spikes in that last room there, you can actually use it to help you in case you're worried about a jump, especially as Mega Man. Thankfully, none of the jumps in the stage after the auto-scrolling segment aren't too bad. If anything, this stage is very front-loaded in its difficulty like that, as Mega Man. Base, again, just kind of coasts through these stages pretty quickly. This is the one I would recommend using the wind for a lot as well right here, because this jump's doable without the wind. It's just very precise. That's a case where you can just look at it and go, they probably could have tuned the stage design a little better to have Mega Man have an easier time in it. There's a lot of signs where this game was just designed for base first and they either added Mega Man in later, or they were trying to make a harder Mega Man game, period, and figured that Mega Man should have a rough time. I can't tell which is more likely. With that said, I think after this next screen we're heading into Tenguman, so get out your spread drill. Tenguman, like his equivalent in Mega Man 8, likes to stick at the top third of the screen, kind of hovering about. Because that spread drill is hard to hit him with unless he's on the lower part of his little hovering, barring using the splitting feature of spread drill, which can still stun him down to the ground, but it will do, like I've said, inherently less damage than the larger drills will. He's probably one of the easiest bosses to stun lock because of this, because every time you hit him when he's in the air, he falls down and then starts floating all over the place again. When he actually gets to attack, for one thing, he still has Tornado Hold where he'll blow you away. He has the Tengu Blade when he lands, which is a giant slash forward. He can dash all over the place, which I think generates some wind that tries to push you into him. And he has a version of the Tornado Hold where he just tries to knock you up into him using the blade on the ground. Overall, not too bad, and I honestly really like his weapon, the Tengu Blade. Thankfully, we don't get the Tornado Hold this time around. We get a much better weapon that is sort of a version of the Slash Claw, where you do a melee attack, but it also generates a projectile that goes a pretty good distance forward and can bounce off of walls with pretty good effectiveness. It does good damage. I like it a lot. And if you even slide with it or dash with it as base, you even do an attack while you do that. It's really cool. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we go after more Robot Masters. See you guys then.